Welcome to the We Are VIP podcast. Each week, your host, Hasten, Director of Recruiting at VIP, will bring you valuable insights from thought leaders, introduce you to incredible companies, and bring you tips for landing your dream job from our team of executive recruiters at VIP. And now, Casey Hasten.
Welcome to the We Are VIP podcast, a podcast devoted to adding value to your career or candidate search, brought to you by VIP. I'm your host, Casey Hasten. I'm an executive recruiter, director of recruiting with VIP, and your all-around hiring guru. And it is my passion to address topics each week that I think you might find interesting and based on some feedback that I've received from the audience. So today on the show, I'd like to welcome Mary Ceccanese, owner and principal consultant of Dynamic Connections, a company that focuses on engagement and energized work through positive business practices. She also is an She also is an executive education affiliate for the University of Michigan, collaborating with the Center for Positive Organizations, and the author of You Can Create Positive Change at Work, a book that is set to release very soon, next week, I believe. She is passionate about empowering leaders to create a positive work environment and culture. Thanks for joining us today, Mary.
It is my pleasure, Casey. Thank you so much for inviting me on.
Absolutely. So I just want to mention that we're big fans of the Center for Positive Organizations, and we've actually had one of your coworkers on the show already. So Dr. Wayne Baker, who was a fan favorite. So
yes, Wayne's office is actually down the hall from mine.
That is awesome. I'm going to have to make a trip out there someday just to see all you guys. I think that would be so much fun. So the first question I'd like to ask before we dig into the meat of this topic is, how did we get connected?
Oh, well, I believe last month I attended Frank Agan's networking hub for the first time and was just blown away by all the people on there and all the different things they do. And I felt like I was with a group of like-minded people.
Absolutely. And I believe you were in my breakout group, weren't you?
I believe so.
Yeah. And then a quick one-on-one. And I decided, wow, our audience really needs to hear what she has to say. This is pretty incredible. And that's what I love about the Networking Hub, or whichever organization you might choose to support and become a part of. You have to really be dedicated to that organization. You can't just go once and expect magic to happen. You've got to keep going and keep going and keep going. But I think it's so important to emphasize connections and networking. So that's why I asked that question at the beginning of every show. So thank you for that. So now let's move on to you. So tell us about the work you do. What inspired you to start Dynamic Connections, and how do you serve others today through that?
Well, that's a really good question, and I thank you for asking me. It was about 14 years ago that I started giving presentations around the campus of the University of Michigan on Professor Jane Dutton's work on high quality connections. And after about 10 years of doing this, there's some areas in Southeast Michigan, but mostly at the University of Michigan, a couple of people, including Jane, suggested that I should really just go on my own and see where I can take the company. And so I have been on a journey for the last 4 years with the company. I co-created a deck of cards for making high quality connections with a co-author in Australia. And as you mentioned, yes, I have a book coming out with another co-author who works at as a professor at Eastern Michigan University. And so my goal is just to be able to reach the masses. There are so many things out there for CEOs and directors and supervisors, but there's nothing for staff. How can we help staff live a better life at work? We spend more of our waking hours there than we do anywhere else. Even during COVID, we may be home, but we still have to work. And every time we have interactions with people, that affects what we do and how we do it. And so, yes, I am passionate about helping especially the little guy.
I can see that you're very passionate about that. We were just having that conversation today during a client lunch about, because, I place people in jobs for a living. That's what I do. And it's never my goal to place them somewhere where they're going to hate their life because of their job, because we do spend so much time, with our coworkers and with, at work. So you want that to be an environment that you look forward to going to. I love the studio that I record in. Their motto is, "Thank God it's Monday."
I love it.
Isn't that
I
awesome?
love it.
Yeah.
Yes.
So,
yes.
and I see it every time I come up here because everybody's so friendly and engaged, and just, it would be a good company to model for sure. So,
Oh, absolutely.
so okay, so let's talk about our job seekers, because that's primarily who our audience consists of. Okay.
Yes.
So, and we're going to dig in a little bit deeper into those dynamic connections, but you talk a lot about company culture too. So when a job seeker is interviewing for a job, what is one piece of advice you could give when it comes to looking for red flags in the company culture? I mean, what kind of questions should you ask in an interview regarding the culture?
In the book, we talk about the importance of mission, vision, and values. And it's really important to find out if your values align with the company's mission, vision, and values. All right. What are the company norms and expectations? Are employees empowered to be creative? Are employees encouraged to work together to help each other succeed? I think those things are really important questions to ask, but it's also observing. How are people treated? If you're in an interview or you're in a company and you go to a physical interview, how are like upper echelon people treating the receptionist?
Good point.
That tells me a lot about a company, because your title should not matter. You are a person there contributing and doing your work.
I agree wholeheartedly. I went to a couple of instances. I've got some really great clients, but I remember this one. It was a scrap metal company, right? Big yard, scrap metal everywhere. It's like a boy's dream, right? All the Tinker Toys, the automobile shredder, those kind of things. And the CEO and founder took my business partner and I on a tour on a golf cart. And they have about 200 people that work there that are on site, right? Every person he passed by, he called them by name and asked them something about their family.
Oh, I love it.
Every single person. Exactly. And then I think another real good indication of culture during an interview is, one of my other clients, they do this and it's great. They will have you interview with 2 people at a time from the team. Then they have you do a second interview with 2 people from another team. And I think that speaks volumes.
Yes, absolutely. I totally agree. I want to go back to one thing, though. I think it's important for your listeners to know is that I work at the University of Michigan, and I've been there for 33 years. But my role is the coordinator of a research center. It has absolutely nothing to do with what I do in my business. It's totally opposite. I work on grants, and I work on budgets and book editing and event planning. And I started from the ground up. And so that's why I'm so passionate about making sure that the hidden person has tools to help them thrive at work.
I think that's beautiful. And I think it's important. I don't think any one person is more important than another in an office. We're all important. We're all people. We're all human beings. So I really, really respect what you just said there. So one of your areas of expertise, though, is supportive communication. What are some ways a person can address a problem or give constructive criticism without putting a strain on the relationship or causing a lot of problems?
I love supportive communication. And one of the things that is primary if you're going to have supportive communication is what is called the positivity ratio. The positivity ratio means that every person has a minimum of 3 positive statements made to them for every negative statement. It's actually closer to 5 to 1. But people are so blown away with this. We try to kind of guide them into it and start with 3 to 1, because when you get positive affirmation, it's not just once a year during your review. This needs to be on a constant basis, observing, complimenting, asking questions like the gentleman you just mentioned in the golf cart. Those things help people feel valued. So if you want to be able to help someone grow and give them some negative information, they're going to be more inclined to listen to you because they know that you're doing it because you care, not because you're just out to get them.
Do you believe in the sandwich method? Like
Yes.
good,
Yes.
bad, good, maybe?
Yes, but to be honest, very modified.
Okay.
And I'm saying modified because you really need to have the positivity ratio first. Okay? Then when you go to have the sandwich method conversation, again, the person isn't feeling like they are being put down or chastised because you've already developed a trusting relationship with them. So then when you sit down with them and you talk to them and you say, I've noticed this lately. Can you tell me what's going on? And then, all right, so how can we work together to have a better outcome for everybody? It's just that way of working together, addressing an issue, but doing it in a way that isn't unkind.
Right. So I have a question. So you're talking about the 3 to 1 ratio, the positivity ratio. Is this something you're doing at the same time, or is this be like I drop a compliment today, or I drop something positive the next day, and then the next day, and then you kind of build up that credit for when you need to drop that negative one? Or
it's like Stephen Covey's emotional bank account. Okay? You constantly make a deposit so that when you need to take a withdrawal and have a conversation about something that needs to be corrected or changed, you've already got all the chips in the bank.
Absolutely. And I love that. And I want to go back to something you said earlier, because you were like, just say good job or something like that. I can tell you, and a lot of people that I know, that you don't need to give me more money. You don't need to give me more responsibility, although I'll take it. You won't have to give it to me. I will take it. But all I ever want is good job, Casey. And I will move mountains for you.
Yep. It's because what's more important to money than money, even though we have to have money to live on,
Sure.
Okay, what's more important for an employee is to feel valued and to feel like they're making a contribution to the whole.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
That's why the mission, vision, and values and making sure they align are really important. My co-author, Kim, when she was applying for her job as a professor at Eastern Michigan University, she went through the whole series of making sure she figured out and looked up what were the mission, vision, and values of the university. Did they align with hers? And they did, and she is just passionate about teaching there and loves it. But she went and made sure she did her homework first.
So what do you do if the company doesn't have their values posted?
I would ask.
Okay. Just ask for the interview?
I would just ask, say, I'm curious to know if I'm going to make a contribution. I really would like to know what the company stands for.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think that, we're VIP, my company, that so graciously lets me get away with having a podcast, I think that they, even though it's not a stated value, it comes through loud and clear in everything that they do, and that's give value first, And for me, that's my number one internal rule: give value first. The money will follow, but give value first. And all the people that I've trained over the years, that's what I tell them. In recruiting, it's a commission job. And yep. I'm like, but if you put those people first and you put their livelihoods and if they're going to be happy in that job or not first, it's going to pay dividends, because when they get to be a hiring manager, they're going to come back to you.
Mm-hmm. Yep,
So,
absolutely. It's connections mean more than anything else.
yeah. Oh, I would 100% agree. And going back to how we met, Frank Agan is probably one of the best connectors in the world. So for those of you listening, if you have not connected with him on LinkedIn, he is always open to connect and have a conversation, and he is somebody you need to know. So there you go. You've heard him mentioned.
I couldn't agree more.
Yes, absolutely. All right. So your new book is just full of tools that are going to help employers in any position make a difference in creating that more engaging workplace. But what does that mean to have an engaging workplace? And what are the benefits?
Yeah, that's a really good question, and I'll tell you why. Because when you live and work in academia, a lot of times I switch words for things to put them in the day to day so that it makes it easier for us to understand. But as far as an engaging workplace, it's it's a workplace you can go in the morning and you're happy to be there. You get up in the morning and you want to go to work. You're not sitting there going, what's the latest I can get in there and be okay and not get into trouble? It's you're excited because you know that you're going to get to use your talents, your strengths, your gifts to the better whole of the organization. The more connected we are, the more benefits there are to us. Research shows that these interactions increase our thinking and learning, build resilience, promote job satisfaction, improve physiological and psychological health. This is all the research of Professor Jane Dutton. She's got like at least 10 lists, or I mean, a list of 10 bulleted items that are all backed by research. When you're in these high quality connections, these are the benefits. There's also benefits for a team and benefits for an organization as a whole. The team becomes more creative, more adaptable. The organization has more retention and job satisfaction. So these connections end up being a real serious key to having a workplace where people feel valued.
I love that we're talking about connections. And I have to tell you, I mean, you've met me once, but we had a really good conversation, and this is what gets me out of bed in the morning is like, who can I connect today, But not only that, forming those connections at work, because just like you said, you want that interaction, and you gave us some statistics there on what happens when you have that engaged workplace. And again, I don't mean to just keep bragging on VIP, but I'm going to. I mean, we are a sales team, and normally you see a lot of strife and chaos on a sales team. We do not operate like that. We operate like every deal is everybody's deal, and we all help each other, and we all work together, and really strive to move the company forward. And so I just want to give a shout out to my VIP team right now and tell you, you guys rock. So
and I appreciate you sharing that, because that's really important to your team, to everybody. It doesn't matter what their title is. The fact is that you all work together to produce.
Absolutely.
And that's what, that's when the magic happens.
Yeah, and not just, to produce, but at the end of the day, serve our clients and serve them in the best way we possibly can. And we can't do that when there's a lot of infighting. I've seen what that looks like, It's not the recruiter that loses, it's the client or the candidate, right? Because of the game. So I really love that that's not the mentality or the work ethic that we have at VIP. It's really amazing. So if you want to come work for us, again, shameless plug, we're hiring.
Well, thank you for that. Yeah, it's very kind of you.
All right. So based on your many years of research, what is one thing all companies should or could do to increase retention? And what have you found that makes the employees happy?
It's, as we mentioned earlier, it's more about feeling valued. It's being looked at as a person. One of the stories in the book talks about this new director that was hired, and the company usually hired from within, but this time they hired from without. There were like 110 people in this department, And within the first 90 days, he wanted to meet with each one of them. It didn't matter their status, their role, or anything. He wanted to know what they did, what were their goals, and how could he help them.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah. That is what makes employees happy.
I could not agree more. And I think now, I hadn't read that story yet, but now that you just mentioned it, my story earlier was spot on about
Yes,
the CEO and the golf cart.
absolutely. It was of the same genre. Absolutely.
Yeah. And, it's so interesting when I'm talking to employees or potential employees, my job seekers, I try to be able to give them that information before the interview because, my job is to help them find a job they're going to love. And I can't do that if I don't know the companies, right? To the best of my ability. But I still encourage them to ask those open-ended questions once they get in there, just like you're doing in the book, to make sure that it's a good fit. The job seeker is interviewing the company just as much as the company's interviewing them. And
Yes.
so don't forget that.
Right. It's a different model than 40 years ago, 30 years ago, even 20 years ago. The model today is much more about an equal partnership.
Yes. And especially, coming out of the pandemic, we are seeing that a lot of these people had time to reflect on what they really, really wanted. And it wasn't working 60 hours a week.
No.
It was more family time. It was more collaboration. It was, being recognized, being challenged, but still, I don't want to, maybe being loved or appreciated. And
Yes.
they're demanding that. It is I've seen such a shift in the way that candidates are responding to job offers and to open opportunities right now. It's amazing. So,
Yes. Yes. Totally, totally understand.
yeah. So I love that you believe in the power of high connections or high quality connections, and that's something you're passionate about. I'm passionate about that. So what is the definition of a high quality connection in your eyes, and how can they help you move your career in the right direction?
All right. So in the book, we devote a whole section to high quality connections because they are so, so important. All right. These are interactions we have with people. They're not a relationship. They could become one, but these are just passing texts, Zoom call, in-person meeting, walking to your car. You pass people all the time. And those interactions can be deeply humanizing, neutral, or deeply dehumanizing. So if you smile at somebody, that changes you physiologically and it can change them. Just something as simple as that. All right, these ties or interactions energize us, and they speak to us about taking action. They light us up. Just think about a conversation you've had with somebody and found out, like you and I did when you talked about your journal and I talked about my book, and we were just both getting so excited and had never met before,
Right.
But it's that interaction there that happens. You have a sense of feeling valued and listened to, because high quality connections are really composed of 4 parts. The first one is respectful engagement. Having the person you're talking to know that you're paying attention. Even though our brains can take about 300 to 500 words a minute, when you're Italian and speak with your hands, you still can only talk maybe 150. So there's a lot of space there for you to be thinking about, okay, I just came from this other meeting. Oh my gosh, I got to prepare for this for the afternoon. What am I going to have for lunch? All these things are going on, and it's like, we want to be heard, so we need to give that gift to other people. So that's part of respectful engagement. The second one is task enabling. Enabling in the English language has a very negative connotation. So I'm going to ask everyone to think of task enabling as helping. It's more than helping, but that's the best way to think about it. It's helping somebody else succeed. Give them the tools they need to do their job or do their job well. Help them by connecting them with other people, maybe that do similar things that they could learn from. provide a mentor for them. All right. There's so many things we can do to help each other. In fact, Professor Dutton came up with an infinity symbol because the more grateful we are, the more we give. Then the more we give, the more grateful we are. And this just can go on infinitely.
Love it.
The third pathway is trust. Something that is so difficult in the workplace. I think of all the pathways, this is the one I personally think is the hardest. But it's being able to be counted on, depended on, that you're going to do and say what you say and do you're going to do. You need to follow up. You need to be completely honest. You need to have that connection so that trust can be built, because then you and the other person can be the best version of yourself, which is what we all aspire to. And believe it or not, the last pathway is play. About 8-10 years ago, Professor Dutton did some research and found that when people come together with no intended consequence except to have fun, that's another hardwired connector.
Huh. I love it. I love it when you talk about connections, especially like hardwired in the brain, creates a pathway. I love that for sure. So I have one more question for you before we start wrapping up the show, and it's a real important one. And unfortunately, we don't have a lot of time to spend on it. I probably should have led with this one, but I really want to talk about, the importance of toxicity tamers that help tame toxic connections that have a negative impact on working relationships. And I'm actually asking this personally because I've run into a narcissist, right? And so, yeah, it was first and hopefully only I will ever deal with again because it was horrible. But how can someone identify a potentially toxic connection? And alternately, how can they identify a high quality connection?
So that the thing about toxicity is that we've all experienced it. In one form or another, we can all tell stories of things that have happened with people that, you feel it in your gut. You're very uncomfortable around that person. Physiologically, you can tell just by how you're reacting to what they either say or how they treat you. That is very, very obvious. And a lot of times I tell people to just trust their gut, because that's not scientific,
right?
But it's intuitive. We can see when someone's disagreeable. We can see when there's a negative Nelly around. We can, find other people that just want to gossip and make things horrible for some person. And so we really want to see how we can counteract those situations. So I want to start a movement that I mentioned in the book, and it's called positive gossip. I feel like if we spent more time talking about the good in somebody and sharing that with someone else, then we'll have less toxicity.
I agree with you 100%.
And if you add the high quality connections on top of that, you're in a dream world, and when you come into work that it's not work. You get lost in what you're doing because you enjoy it so much. You lose track of time.
Yep.
The scientific term for that is flow.
Yep.
You think about it, a child that is outside playing, they don't think about time. They don't think about anything except how they're enjoying what they're doing.
They're in the moment.
They're in the moment, exactly. And that's what we need to be more consciously aware of, because we're all going to have negatives around us. But finding these tamers to try and help us, limit the contact we have with them. Maybe you have to work with them, but that doesn't mean they're your best friend, and make sure you have a support network of people that have high quality connections.
Yes. Absolutely.
Because you need to be able to draw on them when you're trying to struggle through a toxic situation.
Man, those are words to live by right there. It's all about your network, isn't it?
It certainly is.
Absolutely.
It certainly is.
All right, well, we're going to move on to our VIP questions real quick, and then we'll wrap this up. So, are you ready for these questions?
I'm ready. I am ready.
All right, Mary. If you were chosen to be one of the first colonists on Mars, what 3 things or people would you take with you?
Well, first of all, I would say, since I talk about interactions so much, to me, it's the 3 people that have to be there, not the things. As long as you have those people with you, you have your support network, all right? And I thought long and hard about the people I would want to have with me. And being that I am a faithful-filled woman, I think I want the Lord with me. I think that's one of the people I would want. The second one, I think, would be my dad. My dad died young, and even though I was 30 when he died, I didn't have enough time in my adult life with him. I would love to go back and have conversations with him. And so if he was with me, I could do that. And the third person is actually a very good friend of mine. Her name is Cheryl, and she has opened my eyes to things in ways that I've never thought of before. So she's kind of like a guide for me in ways. I've lived a pretty sheltered life. I was born in Canada. My family has always been very strong and very helpful. And so I haven't been exposed to a lot of things that are normal for a lot of people. And she is just helping me to unpack this and learn more about the world as a whole, and the cultures and the people, and what they like and what they don't like, and how to engage with someone that's not like you.
Everybody needs a friend like that, for sure. Okay, one of my favorite questions. What is one thing you do each morning to set your day up for success?
You probably won't be surprised to hear this, but I pray.
I think it's so important to have that, that quiet time, whether you're meditating, whether you're just clearing your mind, whether you're praying. Yeah. I think that's a very important thing to do in the morning. So, okay, my final question. If your life's work was being summarized in a news article, what would the headline be?
It's a long headline. I'm not sure I can get away with it, but I'm going to try anyhow.
Okay.
All right. She created positive work environments where employees were valued and appreciated.
I don't think that's too long. I think that's beautiful. How do people get in touch with you?
Oh, the best way to get in touch with me is either to send me a message from my website at dynamicconnectionsllc.com, or in an email, mary.ceccan S as in Sam, @gmail.com.
I love it. Well, Mary, this has been fantastic. Thank you so much for joining us today. And I just have one last thing to say to you. You are a VIP.
Oh, thank you so much. That's so sweet of you. I appreciate that.
And that's a wrap for today. Join us next week here on the We Are VIP podcast. We'd love to know how we can help you be a VIP. To find out more, log on to wearevip.com.